Saitou was an average Johnny Sins wannabe who got kicked to the curb when he demanded more pay for being a pipe cleaner. On his way home, he got isekai'd before a truck ran him over. He woke up in a medieval fantasy land where he joined a dementia-ridden wizard and his party. Saitou used his expert-level lockpicking skills to open up a locked door as his magical party members watched on, amazed by the wannabe Johnny Sins who used tools that they had never seen before to crack open the door. He proceeded to crack open the second door, but got stumped as it also had a magical seal. The old wizard in the group joined him to simultaneously open the door. They finally got to the treasure chest inside. As Saitou once again put his skills to use, he remembered his past life, which was basically him doing the same thing, but getting paid with insults and forced discounts. He was now doing what he did best for a misfit gang of thieves who were amazed to watch him. After popping open the chest, they found out that it was a mimic, a fake chest set as a trap for thieves. The female warrior, Resla, smashed the monster's chest in half, saving the plumber from a rather uneventful end. He noticed her helmet was loose and offered to fix it. Resla, who seemed shy for an all-powerful warrior, reluctantly gave him the helmet and watched him as he pounded away with his plumbing hammer. She seemed to enjoy watching a beta male work for her. Outside their latest conquest, he asked about the wizard named Morlock. According to Resla, he was a level 83 wizard, which meant he was very powerful compared to the rest of them. The slight problem was the fact that he had the worst case of dementia known to man. His condition made him end up in peculiar situations on several occasions, like a mission where he teleported himself into the back of a stone golem and used it to crush the party's enemies, or the time he forgot who he was and asked his party members to re-enlist him into the party. He also occasionally forgot he was a living person and went on rampages with zombies. But he was useful in certain situations, like the time they all died, and he single-handedly carried all their coffins to the church after selling all their equipment except for Riesla's metal bikini and resurrected them. When asked why he had a thing for playing dress-up with a metal bikini, he used his dementia to hide his creepshow activities. As they traveled on, his aged back kept snapping and had to be attended to by Lafanpan, their low-budget Wendy, who traveled with them and provided magical healing at the price of a gold coin. As they traveled, Saitou noticed her coin bag getting filled and opted to make her a wallet backpack. In exchange, she kept fixing the old wizard's broken back for free for a couple of days. One day, while measuring Resla's knee pads, she asked about his measurements as things like centimeters were not used in their world. When he asked for their units of measurements, the wizard revealed that ages ago, the founder of their kingdom, a king named Madaraka, who had an elephant-sized third leg, decided to become a medieval times King Solomon and had hundreds of wives and children. The great scholars of that time decided to use the king's meat stick as their basic unit of measurement. For reference, Lafanpan was currently 1 Madaraka in length. Somewhere in the woods, an armored dwarf got attacked by some goblins. He was a magician, which was uncommon for his race. His career choice was as a result of his high magic level, which largely depended on becoming a metal punching bag that absorbed attacks and destroyed its enemies by releasing a supercharged attack spell. Seeing as he disappointed his people and went off to become a midget Merlin, he lived a lonely, solitary life with nothing but his puppy to keep him company. Meanwhile, on the 13th floor of a labyrinth, a duo of an axe-wielding princess and a pirate without an eye patch went deeper into a tunnel after coating their weapons with strengthening magic, as attack magic wouldn't work at that depth. Saitou was at the item shop run by Maivena, who was surprised the plumber could use an abacus. As they spoke, a weird-looking armored warrior came in looking for herbs. When she spoke, Saitou recognized the creepy warrior as Resla. She ran away when he called her name and hid at the back of the shop with Lafanpan. The next day, a bald thug came into the shop to sell off a knife. After trading it for 15 coins, he left and mocked Maivena for being an amateur. The blade was actually a dull one he found in a cave and disguised with magic to sell. The alopecia ambassador had actually played himself. The dull blade was a cover for the real and very rare mithril silver worth over 300 coins that Saitou and Maivena uncovered after he left. On their next heist, after he almost got double isekai'd, Morlock saved him, but immediately forgot his spell. They were both saved by Raisla, who was more concerned about her man-pet, who was starting to realize that opening locks in the medieval times still made him a spineless weeb. To get an edge, he asked the old wizard to teach him some magic. During another heist, where the old man had forgotten his spell right as they were about to be attacked by a goblin army, Saitou helped him complete the spell. His new usefulness impressed Raisla. Once they got to the treasure, they asked him to forget it, as they were at a level where magic could not be used, making them vulnerable to any traps. He didn't listen and fell through the ground into an underwater cave where his leg was broken. He lay there remembering how his boss explained how worthless he was when he asked for a higher pay, and thought his new party likely abandoned him after his epic fail. Luckily for him, being an expert lockpick wasn't exactly a very common skill, which made him less useless than his former life. They came to save him after using the flashlight he gave them from his fanny pack earlier. The gang was fighting a water hydra. Raisla, who was terrified of the creatures, ran away to throw up, as Morlock held it in place with his magic. Saitou, who had learned how to swing a sword, cut it down. After killing it, he decided that he was going to eat it. The rest of the team thought the newbie had gone mad, but he claimed to have something special planned. He went to Maivena to get the type of needles assassins used. Maivena was particularly happy to sell him murder weapons and was hoping his victim was Raisla. Once he got back, he skinned the head of the beast and skewered its meat on the needles. After grilling it and adding some seasoning, he gave the medieval criminals a bite. They both went crazy, as they had never tasted cooked food before.
Perfect!
Raisla, who was repulsed by the idea of eating the Loch Ness monster, changed her mind after taking a bite. Morlock suggested opening a sushi place, but Saitou, who seemed to prefer being a broke thief that faced life and death situations every day, had other ideas. On their next mission, he had abandoned a chest after noticing a clever trap. His multiple near-death experiences had taught him a valuable lesson about traps and how dangerous they might be. They came across another chest that seemed poorly guarded. As he cut the trap's wires, he hit the wrong one, and a slime that mainly melted off metal fell on Raisla. Her armor fell off, revealing her juicy D-cup melons and snatched rice cakes. She knocked out the old geezer who was taking in the beauty of youth that his dementia had made him forget, and turned away when she noticed that their handyman had lost focus. A wannabe Wolverine elf and a devoted priest, who also seemed to be in the thug business, were tearing through a monster army. The elf had mastered ancient MMA after being the family's bad egg that couldn't use magic. She decided to turn to bloodshed as her divine purpose, and the priest healed her after every battle. The priest only had healing magic and merely tagged on providing support to the elf whenever she was injured. The priest had started to develop an unholy, highly creepy addiction to the elf. She liked seeing her hurt, as that was the only time she was useful. She kissed and licked the elf's injuries, claiming that it was the best way to heal her. In reality, she was a twisted nun who simply had a very creepy mind and couldn't hold herself back. One of the monsters who escaped murder decided to hang back and watch the creepshow partners instead of finding safety. Outside the palace, the king had put out posters looking for someone to defeat the Demon King. After no one showed up, he left to get the job done himself and left the minister, who was attacked by a coup looking to rob the treasury. The king came back to find the intruders turned to stone by the minister, who was very proficient at magic. The king, who had successfully defeated the Demon King, was playing chess with the Demon King's still living head and decided to cancel the execution as he had made a new friend. He disguised the Demon King as a new knight to replace the commander that led the failed coup. At night, while they roasted medieval marshmallows, Lafanpan demanded payment from their dementia-ridden wizard who desperately needed spine replacement. Saitou spoke to Raisla about Lafanpan's money addiction. Raisla took him to see Lafanpan, who was offering up her coins to the goddess of the moon. Her species originally lived on the moon, but got cast down by the goddess, who got jealous when the fairies started stealing all the men with their flying melons and rice cakes. If they didn't offer up gold coins every full moon, they would shrink until eventually becoming atomic fairies. After that discovery, Saitou started paying her for protection magic on every mission, as she was too proud to accept handouts. After opening the chest, Saitou and Raisla got teleported to another location. Seeing as they were both not magic users, they had no way of communicating their location and had to head on together. They ran into a massive iron golem and had to fight against it.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
After Raisla had her metal rice cakes tossed around, Saitou used the metal melting slime from earlier to attack the golem and create an opening for her. She cut it down, but was a bit too late as the plumber got crushed by the golem's metal hands. As he lay on the ground with his ribs poking out of his chest, his life of mediocre averageness flashed before his eyes. Raisla had a jar of something called the Drops of Life with her. It was half of a potion she planned to use to get rid of her face scar. Seeing as Saitou wouldn't be revived if she waited any longer, she decided to use it on him. The only way to administer it was through a reverse snow-white kiss. He woke up to Morlock and Lafanpan, who had found them, and apologized to Raisla for being a useless wimp again. Lafanpan teased the metal baddie about her drug administration method and almost got squashed. Lafanpan brought Saitou to the back of Maivana's item store, which was used as a marriage consultancy where broke overaged men with unrealistic standards came looking for young baddies to wife up. Seeing their hopes crushed reminded Saitou that his new reality was still as brutal as the one he escaped from. Morlock had also come to the consultancy, but decided to try his luck with the consultant. He got dragged out by a warrior who referred to him as grandfather. In one of the levels of the labyrinth, the team encountered a succubus. The green love witch enchanted Saitou, as the virgin plumber walked towards her lost in enchanted desire. Raisla, the metal baddie, ran to his rescue and chased away the succubus. The enchantment was still active, and after chasing away the succubus, Raisla became Saitou's new target. As he approached her about to exchange mouth fluids, she forgot how to use her legs and closed her eyes, pretending like she didn't want the fluid exchange. Lafanpan saved her from the experience, and for some reason, she seemed disappointed. As they went on, they got to a trap that electrocuted anyone wearing metal armor. Saitou took off his clothes and gave them to Raisla, who was lost in Fantasyland after seeing the plumber's hot bod. As she took off her armor and gave it to Morlock, the dementia patient forgot where they were and walked into the trap carrying the armor. An old magician was traveling while carrying a giant staff made from the world tree and struck down a titan cyclops. The old man preferred to finish off his opponents with head bashing, as reciting incantations made his jaw hurt. He entered a forest filled with trees and got ambushed by 3 goblins. Seeing as he couldn't swing his staff, he used it as a spear and skewered the clueless monsters. Meanwhile, in what looked like a desert, a ninja sliced up a warrior after using his special skill to freeze the warrior in place as he stepped on his shadow. He saw a lady and decided to use her as his next target. When he stepped on her shadow, he fell through. The lady was a witch with powers that tied her shadow to the demon world. After countless days, he returned from the other side with 2 demons that cast a spell to temporarily sever the woman's ties to the demon world. As he used his skill on her and froze her in place, he came in for the kill and ended up kissing her.
Nice.
Seeing as that was the first beautiful target he had singled out in a long time, the creepy ninja had no time to waste on Riz and did what he did best to get what he wanted. A group of aged creeps that looked like a council of sorts created the kingdom's officially recognized hero party. The party's first member was a magic warrior named Kynes. They staged a King Arthur-style sword pull and made him their new kingdom hero. Next was a below-average dropout magician named Raichi, who didn't even complete her magic training. They gave her the job after taking a close look at her features. Finally, there was Mompui, who was to be the party's priest. The overweight nerd's clearly Rizless demeanor made him face instant rejection from the old creeps. They changed their mind when one of them claimed Mompui was his nephew. The hero party's life was streamed on HeroTube, where the kingdom watched them display their heroic feats that were mostly Raichi casting a sleeping spell on Mompui, so that she and Kynes could have a special training session that required different levels of fluid exchange. Mompui, who was also a creepy priest, merely pretended to be asleep. Watching their special late-night sessions was the closest he was ever going to get to experiencing such. Later at night, Saitou opened up a locked spellbook and found what was supposed to be a mushroom but looked very similar to the plastic meat stick ladies like to keep around. The Creepshow wizard showed up and assured him that it was a mushroom named the Cockyman root mushroom while aggressively sucking on it. Raisla showed up and seemed to also be a fan of the abnormal mushroom. After slaying a dragon, Saitou's wire cutter snapped when he tried using it to cut the dragon's whiskers. He became depressed until Morlock spoke about a dwarf smith named Dobain, who locked himself in his workshop behind a door of 108 locks. He did this to keep himself away from cheap customers that refused to pay him a full fee because he could do his job remarkably fast. After cracking all 108 locks, he asked Dobain to fix his wire cutter. After getting it fixed up, he had another request, but changed his mind and asked for food instead. After they all ate and drank, he asked Raisla about the effects of regular folks being able to easily defeat monsters. He wanted Dobain to make him a gun to help him get better at their raids, but had to consider the possible effects it could have on their world. Days later, Saitou caught a cold and couldn't join them on missions. Seeing as he always felt useless, he didn't think they would need him. Raisla came back with the other two barely alive. Saitou helping all of them out during missions had become a crutch that the team needed to function. After getting better, he went to get a sword from Maevana, and they spoke about how he first got to their world as it had already been up to 6 months. He had just been fired and was heading home when he got flattened by a bus and transported to Raisla's bed. She almost gave him a second death, but was stopped by Morlock, who noticed that he was a remarkably empty being, with no special traits to make him dangerous to them. Raisla, who had become a stalker, was outside the window with Lafanpan.
Oh, Lord. Again.
She was monitoring their conversation to ensure Maevana had not become a threat to her low-budget Johnny Sins fantasy. At a pub, after discussing his curiosity about the unmanned metal golem from earlier, they decided to head back and find any leftover clues. They got to the kingdom's great labyrinth. Apparently all their raids were actually paid trips into the labyrinth that had different levels. It was a government Ponzi scheme where adventurers paid a fee to enter and tried to get as much valuable items as possible to sell in the outside world. Getting a year-long pass was too expensive for the team that spent all their money on Morlock's dementia and Lafanpan's moon debt. They got in by using Morlock to get an elderly member discount. Once inside, they found nothing around the site where they fought the metal golem. Saitou heard a sound and saw a vacuum cleaner. It went through a false wall that Morlock managed to break away with his magic. For the first time ever, they had opened up an extension of the labyrinth that had dried up as adventurers, and heroes had already taken all the valuable items. What followed the new discovery was a sudden rise in activity. All the groups of weirdos from earlier, like the axe-wielding princess, the wannabe Wolverine elf, and the midget Merlin came. These guys were all adventurers and heroes who lived off what they could find in the great labyrinth and sell. Outside the now crowded labyrinth, the team took notes of their competition. Despite being the ones that unlocked the new area for exploration, all they got was a free 10-year pass into the labyrinth. Kynes introduced himself to them and made his intent to dominate the newly discovered region very clear. After he and Raichi left, Monpui came along. He seemed harmless but was stopped from shaking Saitou by Miss Wannabe Wolverine, who revealed that he hid a poisoned needle in his palm and already paralyzed a lot of the adventurers in the area. After he ran away, everyone gathered to see the strongest party leave with the head of a legendary dragon. The strongest party, which was actually just the minister and disguised Demon King, made a bonfire to discuss their plans at night. The king sent them to investigate a magician's time manipulation legacy. Leaving out such power could become a problem. As they spoke, the Shadow Killer ninja showed up, ran a blade through the minister's chest, and diced up the Demon King's face. He told his butterfly fairy assistant to light them up, but luckily they escaped and made it back to the palace, where they made excuses to cover up their chronic incompetence. Shortly after, their party got disbanded. The old magician with the enormous staff also dropped out of the exploration after his staff failed to fit into the regular-sized entrance. During a raid, the team came across a mutated turtle that ate ninjas. Morlock was the first to get knocked out by the tortoise's labyrinth breath. Raisla was also about to get snapped in half when Liliza Lassenpop, the axe-wielding princess, showed up and sliced the tortoise up. her Walmart pirate partner named Guivra showed up, and they both claimed the treasure as they defeated the beast that guarded it. After Guivra failed to open it up with his medieval times lockpicking skills, Saitou the Gen Z lockpick showed them what he was made of. As he picked, Liliza looked closely at him and realized that he was the type of guy that Guivra liked to play with. When Saitou handed over the jewels to him, Guivra became fully enchanted. Raisla immediately acknowledged her latest competition. Later on, after getting lost in the labyrinth, Saitou ran into Monpui, the fat priest who gave the word selfish its meaning. He immediately put up a protective barrier to show off to Saitou, who had his own barrier made from holy water he got from the team. Monpui switched to stuffing his face with potato chips and discovered a new level of hunger when he saw Saitou with sandwiches. After Saitou offered him one, he rejected it, thinking it was poisoned. After seeing how Saitou's team treated him, Monpui started considering changing his ways. Luckily for him, Captain Clueless II came and still considered him a friend. Later on, Raisla was battling an overgrown tarantula and had started dealing hits. Her win was stolen by Wolverine's biggest fan, who swooped in and stole the kill. After she claimed the chest for herself, Raisla refused, and they agreed to a duel. During the duel, Raisla was slowed down due to her armor's weight and got injured. She took off her regular armor and was left with the light padded armor Saitou made for her. Saitou, the nerd creep, intentionally made it with loose laces. As the armor fell off, Raisla covered herself in shame. Later on, after quitting the fight, Miss Wannabe Wolverine was being consoled by her dirty-minded priest with hugs, when Saitou, the king of awkwardness, walked in to give her some of the treasure. After seeing the vacuum cleaner he found the other day, Saitou chased it into a clearing where countless items from his world seemed to have been gathered. He got ambushed by the Shadow Ninja and was saved by Raisla, who got trapped by the Shadow Technique. As the ninja almost sliced her up, he got hit by an arrow from a crossbow shot by Midget Merlin. As he attacked the dwarf, he used his magic to hit the ninja with a Tier 3 fiery heat blast. The ninja and Primas, his plus-size fairy, left the party. After Morlock made it to them, the dwarf teared up and claimed that he was Gibungle, Morlock's student who had been looking for him for 2 decades. According to Gibungle the Midget Merlin, Morlock was his master, a great magician from the Far East who had left his town 2 decades ago in pursuit of forbidden magic. Raisla remembered that this was around the time they first met and asked the Dementia Wizard about the midget's claims. Morlock told them that he had actually forgotten everything about himself 2 decades ago, which was why he had no idea who the midget magician was, especially because he only preferred female apprentices. Gibungle, who was surprised by the fact that the group casually roasted his master, told them that Morlock was no ordinary wizard. He was the Bergheim, the Great Mage. As he said those words, he took a dagger to the face and collapsed. As Lafan Pan attended to him, the others turned to face the assailant. As they took their stances, the Shadow Wizard returned, and this time, he had come with his demon friends to finish what he started.
Let's go!
A flashback showed that after tongue-raping the 400-year-old witch, the ninja had returned with his demon friends to find her. Once he got to her house, he found it messed up and old. He went into the basement and found his princess shriveled up and dying. As he looked over at her wondering if she was still alive, Primas showed up. She explained that the witch had been cursed by a demon to remain young forever. The demon was then killed by another magician, but its curse remained. The curse was also set up in a way that if she were to ever fall in love, all her years alive would immediately catch up to her, leading to a quick death. The ninja's kiss had triggered her old heart and made her fall in love, which was why she was dying at a rather quick pace. Primas told him that the only way to heal her was by finding the mage in the labyrinth with the secrets to time manipulation. This was why he was currently trying to annihilate Saitou's squad. Seeing as Saitou's squad members were very good at defense, they managed to withstand some of the attacks. Lafanpan kept Raisla from falling for the ninja's shadow trick by erasing her shadow with light. After Morlock failed to hit the demons with the 7 thunder gods, they grabbed onto Saitou and smashed his head. Luckily for Raisla, who was already crying, it was a duplication trick by Givra, who had shown up with Liliza after stalking Saitou and seeing what was going on. The Wolverine wannabe, Flanril Arlil, also showed up with her creepy priest to help with the fight. The creepy New Kingdom hero party pulled up as well. Liliza told them that they had followed Saitou after noticing that he went deep into the new area with his party. They thought he had found some new special treasure. What they found was special, but it wasn't treasure. The creepy priest told them that the ninja was the one who ambushed several parties and heroes. They had to eradicate him and his team. Climax went on the offensive and got knocked out by Raichi. Ninja noticed that Lafanpan and the priest were preparing a demon banishment spell and jumped in to save his demon friend. He had always been a hired mercenary, and somehow managed to find demon friends who decided to stick by him in his weird pursuit of love that took the age gap to new heights. He was doing this sacrifice to repay them. After surviving the hit, Climax came back and started an incantation to invoke a powerful evil that demanded her to sacrifice her black wings. Climax was a regular-sized black-winged baddie who was always hunted by creepshow adventurers. She decided that she would put on weight to become less desirable to the adventurers, but failed to realize that men didn't have standards. They still hunted her and captured her easily, as her extra pounds made her slow. She was saved by the witch and lived together with her. She was present when the witch fell in love with the ninja and ended up in her vegetable state. Her hatred for adventurers and devotion to the witch was what drove her to insanity. She kept yelling at Ninja to rip off her wings while everyone else watched on like Indian telenovela characters. After Ninja kept holding back, she used telekinesis to cut them off herself. By doing this, she summoned the evil and transformed herself along with Ninja and the demons to a tall pillar with multiple eyes that shot lasers and hit Flanril in the ear. After she got hit, the creepy priest immediately reattached her ear. They almost got roasted together, but got saved by Raisla. The rest of the group got into defensive positions to protect themselves from the one-shot kill Pillar of Eyes. Morlock tried hitting it with the 7 Thunder Gods again, but all that did was make the eyes dizzy for a couple of seconds. Regular attacks were also useless, as the eyes protected themselves with rock eyelids. With no other option in sight, Saitou told the old wizard to use the spell. The old wizard was shocked that he knew the spell. After seeing the meat stick mushroom the other night, Saitou realized that it was a false cover for something else, a scroll containing the magic of time manipulation. The old wizard was the rumored mage that had conquered time manipulation. Decades earlier, Morlock was an aspiring mage with a daughter who loved him and made him a necklace. He was very ambitious and wanted to achieve his mage status to give her a better life. Because of this, he was rarely home. One day she fell sick with a fever and stayed in bed asking her mother for her dad. Morlock came back later after she slept off and quickly left after getting a book. His wife told him about her condition, but he left assuring her that their daughter would be fine. He had more important dreams to chase and wanted to achieve them so they could all live a better life. Along the lines of her illness, Morlock returned one morning having achieved his goal and wanted to celebrate with them. He came back to his wife looking over at their daughter who had died from her illness. Her fever went up the previous night at an hour too late. None of the medical specialists were available, and Morlock, who could have helped with his magic, was missing as well. His wife left and never came back after the burial, and he became depressed and angry after the reason for his dreams was no longer in existence. He stumbled upon rumors of time manipulation magic up north in the labyrinth and journeyed alone. Once he got into the labyrinth, he found the false rock door from earlier and opened it. He went into the same hidden location filled with Saitou's world items where he found the scrolls of time manipulation. There was no magic to turn back time, only to freeze time and contact another world. Before he left, he met an otherworldly being and challenged him to a fight in exchange for any wish he wanted. He lost the fight, but as he impressed the being, it decided to take away Morlock's memories that caused him pain. Morlock emerged from the labyrinth with all his previous years erased. He named himself Morlock after seeing it on the necklace his daughter had made, which he still carried. Back in real time, Saitou asked if he was the one that summoned him, but the wizard couldn't remember. Their defenses were becoming too weak to withstand the pillar's attacks. Saitou asked him to use the time freeze spell, but Morlock couldn't remember it. Saitou had memorized it and offered to help. He asked the rest of the team to focus on protecting themselves and moving around to keep the pillar's eyes open, as they needed it to be open when Morlock froze it for a successful attack. As they all struggled, but eventually got into position, Morlock started reciting the incantations with Saitou's help. Just as they were about to be obliterated by the eye's laser beams, he managed to pull off the spell and froze everything in time except himself. Once everything was frozen in place, the deadbeat dad, who had now become a dementia-ridden wizard, forgot what he was supposed to do.
You're broke! You're f***ing poor!
Morlock, who was the only one moving after activating his time-freezing spell, was confused. He remembered his party members but had no idea what he was meant to do. He looked at his palm and found a writing telling him to destroy the eye. Saitou had used a pen to write down instructions, as he knew the dementia-ridden wizard would likely forget what he was doing. Seeing this made him remember exactly what was going on. He looked around and got emotional. Seeing his party members frozen with their expressions showing the resilience and delusion they had in the face of certain doom. He turned to face the eye. Using the 4 spirit sources, he summoned a secret art that amplified magical techniques and the damage they dealt. With this, he charged at the eye and released a standard fiery heat blast. This attack was not a high-level one, but with the amplification spell he initiated earlier, it had multiplied in power. Once Morlock came in contact with the eye, he saw the memories of Kisurugi the ninja, his demon friends, and Primas. He initially didn't want to complete the strike, but seeing as his friends' lives were on the line, and he had seconds left, he blasted the pillar to rubble. After the time spell wore off, they all watched as the eye crumbled. After the dust settled, Saitou and the girls rushed to the old geezer and saw that he had lost an arm. He asked Lafanpan for a fix, but not for him. He was carrying Primas in his hand. He wanted her to fix up the fairy's wings, as they were not destroyed from the magic she released. Kisurugi and the demon brothers were alive as well, but could barely move. As everyone gathered around them to understand the old wizard's reasons, he explained what he saw in their memories, and had decided that they deserved a second chance. He had only used enough magic to destroy the eye and separate them. The other half of the magic had returned to him, which was why he lost an arm. Raisla, who was simply happy that her adopted father had survived, hugged the old wizard. Using this new opportunity, Morlock took his hand to Ninia, the creepshow priest who liked to lick injuries. He wanted her to give him the VIP treatment, but got interrupted by Monpui, who offered his slobbering services instead. Saitou found Primas's wing, and Givry offered to assist the healing with magic. Primas, who seemed to like being a handicapped plus-size fairy, claimed she didn't want their help as she hated humans, forgetting that she was working with an assassin the whole time. As they fixed her up, Kisurugi begged them to let the demons that stood by him return to the demon realm while he faced execution for his crimes. As he pleaded, 3 blades were telekinetically placed above him. The disguised demon king and minister had come to punish him themselves. As he sent the blade into the assassin, he was saved by Ableth, one of the demons who claimed he was okay despite having 3 brand new body holes. As Talifon stood before the disguised demon king and threatened him, he revealed his true form. Talifon recognized him as his uncle Dorg. Dorg also recognized his nephew. They both proceeded to roast each other for being incompetent, steroid-filled losers who lost to humans on multiple occasions. Seeing the new circumstance, Saitou pointed out that Kisurugi could be spared if the demon king and minister opted to forgive and forget. Lafanpan was more concerned about the powerless plumber who cared about saving the assassin that could have sliced him into the afterlife. He claimed that finding out that he did all he did for love was enough reason for forgiveness. After sparing his life, Morlock told the assassin that he could not reverse time at a specific point. The only one capable of such would be the otherworldly being who was actually just a very advanced mage that created the scrolls in the first place. Unfortunately for them, the mage had decided to go to another world which none of them knew about, so finding him would be impossible. Talifon claimed that his Uncle Dorg's ally, the minister, could do it. Morlock also noticed that the minister was a first-class magician. The minister was about to tell them that it was the king who could perform such magic, but changed it to a knight friend to keep the king's abilities and involvement a secret. The minister revealed that although possible, the magic that could heal the witch required a sacrifice of someone close to the witch. Seeing as being 400 years old made her relationships limited, all the witch had was Kisurugi and Primas. Kisurugi offered himself up as a sacrifice and rejected Primas's request to take it on, as her life was likely too insignificant and small to make up for what the witch needed. His demon companions tried to make him reconsider, but his mind was set. He begged them to help him, even if it meant killing him in the process. The Demon King agreed because of the relationship Kisurugi had with his nephew. After everyone present agreed to letting the assassin pay for his sins by sacrificing himself for love, Primase, with help from Morlock, sent the demons back to their dimension. Meanwhile, the minister opened a teleportation spell to transport him, the Devil King Kisurugi, and Primase to the night that could help them. Before they left, the assassin asked Saitou about his outfit and the type of ninja he was. When Saitou said he was just a handyman, the ninja left, probably thinking the handyman was code for the greatest assassin on the planet. After the assassin and his captors left, Saitou realized he had still not found the vacuum cleaner he was looking for. Morlock told them that all the accumulated junk from the other world was likely the mage's attempts at testing out his magic. As they spoke, other adventurers had found them and were coming to raid the alien items. Saitou quickly rushed in to get as many as he could before the others did. The rest of their group joined in as well. Morlock was stopped by the midget Merlin, who was certain that his master had remembered something. What Morlock remembered was the puppy named Pemo that the dwarf was carrying around under his helmet. Pemo was the child of Pemeridius, a dog Morlock had when he still lived in the East. Morlock still had no idea who the midget Merlin was. Meanwhile, at the witch's house, the king had come pretending to be a wealthy monarch who had top-level magic. He pulled out a sword named the Spirit Returner, or Blood Sword. It returned life to the dying by taking life from someone related. The king didn't want to grant the assassin's wish, as he felt the murderer had no business getting a happy ending, seeing as he ended so many lives at that point. He only decided to go ahead with it, as the assassin was offering up his life for that of someone that was dying because of him. After slicing through Kisurugi, the witch woke up back to her beautiful self once more. She stepped out of her home and saw the assassin standing outside missing an arm and a leg. When the king first cut off a limb, he revealed that the sword worked by cutting off limbs little by little until it had enough blood and turned crimson.
It's only a game. Why you have to be mad?
He used half of the assassin and half of the fairy, which was why the assassin wasn't completely cut up. He was happy to see her alive and well again, but she didn't remember him and asked who he was. Seeing that, he left, feeling that staying away from her was best for the 400-year-old witch who lived alone in a slowly dying brick house. As he left, Primas, who was taking a nap on his blood-stained clothes, came out to roast him for being a spineless nerd who could massacre for some coins, but couldn't face the woman he loved. As he kept going, he heard something and turned to see two thugs harassing his girl. He wondered why she wasn't using any magic. Primas, who had become powerless and thin after the blood sword process, revealed that she didn't feel any magic from the witch, which probably meant that she too didn't come back with magic or had just forgotten how to use it. Hearing this, he hopped like a very agile circus freak and saved his girl from the thugs. He caught the second one in his shadow snare and almost killed him, but decided to let him go, as he had now become a new man, or at least half a new man. Seeing as the revival process likely took away his balls, he started leaving again. Primas took matters into her hands and asked the witch why she didn't invite them inside for a thank you meal. She did, and offered the half-man a hand. Seeing as he was literally lacking one, he still had his pride and hopped into the house. The thugs turned out to be his demon brothers who changed form to help him get his girl with Primas's help. Back at the labyrinth, after bringing out all the alien treasure they found, the guards seized them at the entrance. They were to be investigated by the king's magician. Saitou said goodbye to their friends who had helped them in the labyrinth. Givre, who was very in love with Johnny Sin's wannabe, was happy to help. The midget Merlin was happy to have found his master. Monpui hid his worry and care for Master Saitou behind his bad guy act, and Flanril simply wanted a rematch with Raisla. They bid each other farewell and went on their way. After they left, the gang decided to head back to the inn to rest. Raisla wanted to discuss the possibility of Saitou's return to his original world. At the pub, she asked about it again. Morlock revealed that on that day he had intended to bring back his daughter, who he still couldn't remember, and ended up bringing Saitou by mistake. Lafanpan suggested that Morlock's ability to bring him from his original world meant that he could likely send him back as well. Hearing this broke Raisla's metal heart. She reminded them of how being without Saitou during the days he had a cold made them miserable. She reminded them of how he helped and supported them and ran out of the pub crying with Saitou chasing behind her. Morlock and Lafanpan chased behind them, but were slow as Morlock was struggling to carry her sword. Saitou followed her to a rocky clearing where she asked him if he missed his old life and wanted to leave. He told her that he was a useless toilet plunger who was discarded and unneeded there. She asked about his family, and he told her that although he might miss them, he preferred being in a place where he was needed and useful. Hearing this, she decided to tell him how she felt. As she turned to face him, an armored serpent rose up from the shadows and attacked her. As she held onto it and tore it in half, she told him that she needed him more than anyone in their world, and wanted him to stay, avoiding the opportunity to reveal his actual feelings. He took a plaster and covered her injury, and gave her a potion for the serpent sting. Morlock and Lafanpan finally caught up to them, impressed that Saitou was more knowledgeable about their local monsters. Seeing as he had not yet answered her question, he told Raisla that even if he could take Saitou back, he would end up in the exact time and place they took him from, which meant he would die from a bus accident. Hearing this, along with Saitou's wish to stay with them, made her happy. The armored serpent, which still had some juice left, climbed the old man's back and sunk its fangs into his neck. The next day, after waking up and stretching her melons, Raisla wore her armor, and they all went back to work, leaving Morlock to recover. They took 4 days to get back as they got lost in the labyrinth. When they got back, they couldn't find him and found out that he had died. In the demon realm, there was a goth Bingo who went about doing his master's bidding, hunting down mega dragons like they were small fry and being a loyal pup. Everything changed when he came across a white female wolf who was lost and wandered into the demon realm. Back at the inn, the team interrogated one of the attendants to know what happened to the dementia-ridden wizard. The attendant, who was having a bad hair day, told them that after they went on their labyrinth raid, he had brought the wizard food and found him passed out. As the old man was no longer breathing, he figured he had already gone to the other side. They didn't take him to the temple or use revival magic on him, basically leaving him to die as healthcare was not included in their lodge subscription plan. Seeing as a morgue was also expensive, they dumped the old man in a shed to keep him from decaying. That had turned out to be a bad idea, as a wild dog had found the corpse and took a bite out of the decaying old man. At his grave, Saitou suggested taking him to the church for revival. The girls told him that it had been too long since his death, and parts of him were missing. Even if they could take him to the church, they had to make a large donation to revive someone of that level of magic, and they were still broke. Saitou motivated them to gather as many tools and equipment as they could to revive the old man. Unlike his world, death was not certain here. Lafanpan went to get items from Maevena, while Saitou and Raisla went to the shed to get things to dig out the old man. Back in the demon world, the new canine couple had bonded and spent time together whenever Goth Bingo didn't have a task. One day, his master, who had heard about a white female wolf in town, asked him to kill his girl and bring her to him so he could add her to his stuffed animal collection. That was the day he stopped being a demon's best friend. He eloped with his fair maiden and planned to help her escape to the human world, but she got attacked by another demon sent by his boss. After they both fought back against the demon of sweaty palms, they defeated it, but it was too late, as his fair maiden was now red with her own blood and passed on. He was about to leave her body when he saw a puppy come out of her. The demon had given her a premature C-section. Back in real time, Lafanpan finally made it back from the shop at dusk. Saitou's discovery in the labyrinth made the town very busy. As she got there, she found Morlock's grave dug up and assumed it was Saitou and Raisla. Meanwhile, the duo had also just got back with their tools and found the same thing. They noticed a shadow approaching wearing a robe and thought the old geezer was back. The skeleton started firing fiery heat blasts, so they dodged and hid in a corner. After unsuccessfully trying to knock out its skull,
It's payback time.
the skeleton got blasted by another attack. It was the actual Morlock who had resurrected. Later that night at the inn, Lafanpan revealed that he likely had a resurrection contract that meant he would come back to life after a day if he died, but it could only happen once. There was a slight problem with his resurrection, though. He kept going from skin to bones, and more importantly, his meat stick was missing. This was what the wild dog had eaten. He was pissed off as he had special plans with the succubus from the labyrinth. He revealed that his special stick was on par with Madaraka's when active. To emphasize this, he used Lafanpan, who was still roughly 1 Madaraka in length. Saitou, who had no idea what shame meant, casually revealed that his magic wand was about half that size. Hearing this for some reason made Raisla have a weird facial expression. Gibungle, the midget Merlin, who was now an expert stalker, came in after hearing the full gist. He had a book with guidelines on what to do after losing a magic wand to wild beasts. They had to find the creature and simply extract the master's magic-imbued essence from it. As they left, Saitou and Raisla found out that the guidebook was written by the wand-lacking geezer. Goth Bingo, who now had a child to raise, brought it with him to the human world to teach it how to hunt and survive on its own. He later discovered that his demon master still had ties on him, and he was gradually growing weak, but had to keep struggling to teach his pup. The next day after Gibungle and Lafanpan had a meat stick track-off, they ran into the Wolverine wannabe elf, and Ninia, the blood fetish priest, who thought the wizard was a regular undead and almost banished him. After explaining their predicament, Morlock, who was as persistent as ever, asked Ninia to come have a go with his magic wand later, and got rejected again. They met up with Saitou and Raisla, who were setting up posters for the dog. Saitou managed to set up an amazing drawing while Raisla did her best. As they spoke about the dog, the elf remembered seeing a job poster looking for someone to kill a dog that was attacking people. The dog's description matched the one they were looking for, so they went to the area where Morlock was buried, as it was spotted in that area. Goth Bingo had become weak after spending so much time away from home. As he stumbled across town looking for food, he found the dead Morlock and snagged off a rather long piece of man sausage. The body part was abnormally filled up with magic that reacted in him to create the people-attacking beast that people ran into. While the search commenced, Morlock, who was with Saitou, stopped to ask him a question. He asked the nerd what he thought about Raisla. He initially didn't give a proper answer, claiming she was the average wannabe She-Hulk that had the strength of the group. Morlock had to explain exactly what he meant. Raisla's dad had died before she could even remember him, likely from fighting a wolf, and her mum died leaving her alone in the woods after going out in the snow to find food, and also fighting a wolf. She had survived alongside a wolf pup she found in the woods until he found her. Now, years later, Morlock claimed that he wanted Saitou to be his son-in-law and was asking if he wanted his daughter.
What?
At this time, Goth Bingo had found them. Seeing the half-dead old geezer, Goth Bingo knew he was the corpse with the magic meat that was making him tweak out. He decided to put the old fart down before he could take his spiked meat from him. Morlock had just asked Saitou to officially become his son-in-law. Seeing as the plumber was hesitant, he proceeded to blackmail him. He told Saitou about how he saw Railza in the woods, wandering around like a low-budget Mowgli, and decided to raise her as his own, as he didn't remember his family anymore. This was why he wanted him to marry his special daughter, as he felt no one else would be able to take care of her. After taking a very deep breath, Saitou decided to take the step, and officially asked the geezer for his daughter's hand in marriage. Morlock managed to squeeze a tear through his eye sockets and held Saitou with joy. But first, they had to find the dog with his magic wand. To save them the stress, Goth Bingo came to them and took an extra side of arm to go from the half-dead wizard. Railza, Lafanpan, and Gibungle were getting worried. Raelza decided to go see what was holding up her dad and future husband. Gabungle told Lafanpan to follow her, as they might need someone with magic, while he would go search for the dog. As they ran ahead, Raelza had started considering retirement plans for the old wizard, as he was getting too old for their line of work. They eventually caught up and found Morlock and Saitou on the ground bleeding out. Raelza sent Lafanpan to heal Saitou as he was more likely to expire than the already expired old wizard. She drew her blade to attack the psycho dog, who was also looking to take a bite of her. As she charged the dog, she put her blade on its mouth and got her wrist snared in its teeth. Both teachings that went against the monster hunting guidelines taught by Liliza. Raelza wanted to use the opportunity to create an opening and strike, but got her arm roasted instead. As Psycho Bingo came in for the final strike, she cut it down through its neck. Before she could finish it off, its puppy came to the rescue to stop its father's execution. The psycho dog got up to ask Raelza, who seemed to understand what it was saying, to spare its puppy and take it instead. Raelza got pissed, as the same dog that had almost killed her dad and husband was asking her to protect its son. Despite Morlock's state, she noticed Saitou was healed and had relaxed a bit. She was going to save the puppy, but would cut up the bingo for Morlock's magic. As she got healed by Lafanpan's magic, the brother of the demon the dog had killed in the demon realm showed up. He grabbed onto the already weakened dog and started heading back. Seeing this, Saitou immediately latched onto it and held on while Raelza healed up. Once healed, she went on the offensive. Seeing them, the demon immediately recited the seven thunder gods' incantation. Raelza only survived the attack, as Lafanpan used her coins to raise the seven linked shields of gold, which protected her from the blast. The opening of the blast gave Raelza the opportunity she needed to plunge her sword into the demon. As she cut it down and it slowly died off, they decided to take the dog and head back. Before they could leave, another demon had started to protrude from the dying palm. It was their boss, the Demon King level conjoined twins that cursed the bingo, who had to eat Morlock's magic wand to survive. They had intentionally sent the high-level palm demon to land so it could be killed and serve as a vessel for its entrance to the human world. Seeing the strength of their new enemy, Raelza asked Saitou to take Lafanpan and run back to town, as he would be useless in the fight and only serve to hold her back. The stubborn plumber wanted to stay, but got scolded. As he left, the demon tried stabbing him but got stopped by Raelza. Saitou managed to get to the dog, but its puppy wouldn't let him come close. Saitou was tired of being useless, and Raelza had gotten tied up and was about to have her innards cleansed for stuffing. Saitou came through with the wire cutter and holy water combo, temporarily blinding the demons and cutting through the cords that they had used to latch onto his girl. She immediately swung her sword down the middle of their conjoined brain and gave them an instant separation surgery. Halfway through the strike, they froze the slice and started another incantation that started to freeze Raelza in place. Saitou pushed her away and got frozen instead. They were about breaking his ice sculpture into tiny bits, but she managed to stop their attacks and stood there as the only thing keeping Saitou from a swift end. Morlock, who was paralyzed through the whole ordeal, watched frustrated as his kids were getting manhandled. He sensed his magic nearby. Saitou had put him next to the dying dog before going on his suicide mission. Morlock begged the dog for his powers back. They entered a mental plane where the dog requested that the wizard keep his puppy safe in exchange for the powers. He agreed, seeing as he understood a father's love. He was just in time as the demons had left Raelza defenseless and were about to end her alongside her fiancé. He sliced off their heads and freed Saitou from his ice prison. The cut wasn't enough, and the demons attacked him as he was responsible for what happened to their dog. He initiated the Wind-Killing Sword, a Tier 8 magic that used the 8 formations of the Fires of War to forge 7 fiery blades. The demons fought back with eternal icicles, but ultimately fell to the fiery blades. Saitou and Raelza became fanboys of the wizard, as his perfect timing had saved them both from a very painful and unnecessary end. After all, the whole reason they were there was because the old geezer got his magic stick eaten. As he approached them, Raelza called him father, which made him ecstatic. Their happiness immediately faded away when they saw that he had developed dog ears.
What the fuck?
The conjoined twin demons were not always merged together. They used to be regular brothers. One day, their mother called them into the family throne room and told them that they needed to fight to the death to decide which of them was the family's true son. The younger one immediately gutted his older brother, claiming his right as his mother's son. The older brother, who accepted the reality of his existence, killed off his inexperienced little brother with one hit. He faced his mother for his acknowledgement, but got a fang to the face as a reward. His mother lied. Their family tricked the kids into these brawls and feasted on the winner to gain immortality. As she drained him of life, his younger brother pounced and stabbed their mother in the neck. As the family of Cyclops that were related to Thanos lay dying off, the brothers decided to combine themselves to survive. After merging, they began the stuffed collection with their mother being the first on the wall. This was their way of sticking together as a family. Back in the cemetery, the gang questioned the old wizard about his newfound powers. After remembering that the dog gave him his magic back, he told them that he and the dog had similar feelings towards their kids, which was why they were able to understand each other. The dog had returned the old man's magic and also gave him some of his. Morlock decided that he was going to find a way to save the dog. Meanwhile, Gabungle was still battling countless armies of undead and was about to join their ranks as a new recruit when Flanrel showed up and saved him from them. Nina was also there and was able to exorcise them. They offered to help the midget Merlin to escape death in exchange for payment. The rest of the team couldn't understand Morlock's decision to return his magic to the dying dog. He claimed that since the dog had also given him some of his magic as well, he would return it and try to lift the curse the demon placed on him. As they spoke, an icicle struck the old wizard in the chest and sent him back a couple hundred feet. The demon brothers were still alive and pissed. Morlock, on the other hand, was perfectly fine and stood back up. The immense power combination of his and the dog's magic replenished him and returned him to his prime form. He looked like a Balenciaga model in his torn-up robe. His son-in-law and adopted daughter had no idea the creepshow old wizard was a once gorgeous man. The demon came charging at him with anger and an intent to exterminate. With his new limitless power, Morlock summoned the stone golem he once merged with in the labyrinth. As the demons blasted through it, feeling too strong for such weakness, they were reminded of the power of a trans man. The wizard, who became a trans animal man, controlled the golem to deal some MMA-style knockouts on the demons. Somehow they still survived and decided that it was time they showed the humans their true form.
I don't think you have the facilities for that, big man.
The old wizard decided he had seen enough and entrapped them with the golem. He set up a barrier that separated his kids from the demons and called down a meteor. The ball of flame came down and roasted the demons alive. As their skin got charred and melted off, Morlock started to head back, but they told him that the demons were still very much alive. He probably forgot that living in hell all your life probably made you see fire as a rainy day. Morlock decided to burn them off with a final strike, but returned to his aged form and got dementia once again. He forgot what he was trying to cast and froze in his incompetence. They all watched as the demon came within point-blank range and was about giving the resurrected wizard his final death sentence. Saitou, the king of uselessness, was someone who knew to never relax. He always expected the worst and prepared for it accordingly. As the demon stretched its claw to strike, he was ready with Raisla's sword and cut its arm down. Morlock watched him in pride but couldn't stare in admiration for long as he had to finish off the demon. He started the scorching heat incantation, but forgot its words again. Luckily, his living manual was there to remind him of the words to complete the spell. With that, they finally put the demon to eternal sleep. After being the savior for once, Saitou explained how he took some time to train and get better at magic and sword wielding, which was why he was able to finally do more than pick a lock. Seeing the effort her man had put into helping them, Raisla started a slow-motion run to him. She took her time to take off her armor and ran into his arms with her face covered in blood and sweat. Before they could begin any unhygienic fluid swap, the demon came back. This time, all that was left was a mutated sperm cell that quickly got taken down by the puppy. This sperm was the oldest brother who realized that his brother was gone shortly before following close behind. After reminding his love-struck kids of the importance of safety in their peculiar situations, Lafanpan asked him for some magic so she could purify the area. The midget Merlin, Wolverine wannabe, and nutjob nun finally showed up and opted to help them out with the purification. As Morlock chased Ninya around, the rest of them went to take a look at the crater he had created. Saitou and Reisla went to see the puppy who was still pissed and wasn't letting them come close. He didn't save them from the demon. He simply wanted revenge for his dad, which was why he dealt the killing bite. Morlock came along and could understand the puppy's anger towards them, as it saw them as the reason his father was dying and wanted revenge. Morlock offered his hand and got bitten. He then picked up the puppy and hugged it. As he did, the puppy began to relax, as he could feel his father's aura in Morlock. Morlock told them that he was going to revive the dog and remove its curse. When they asked him how possible his idea was, he told them that during his mental communication with the dog, he found out through its memories that his magic was stronger than that of the demons, which meant he could return the magic and lift the curse. But he didn't know what would happen to him after he gave it back. Reisla didn't understand why the old man was willing to give up his life for a dog that almost killed him. He claimed that his shared fatherhood and drive to protect his kids was why he wanted to revive the dog. He knelt down and decided to flood the dog with enough magic to reconnect the fibers of its existence, even if it took him away in the process. As he began to revive the dog, it had already crossed over to the other side and met up with the girl. As he was about to join her, she told him that he couldn't. The old geezer appeared and told him that he still had work to do. His son was with the old man, calling out to his father to come back. He opened his eyes to his son before him, asking him to wake up. He got up and saw Reisla, who seemed like she could understand him. She told him to live his life properly, especially for the sake of the old wizard who had given up his magic for the dog. As they turned to leave, he told her that he would return to pay for the sacrifice Morlock had made for him. Reisla told him to never return and to stay away from their village. With that, she left, carrying Morlock with her along with the rest, and left the dog and his son to live their lives together. Saitou, who thought he had gone back to his mediocre life as an unwanted plumber, woke up to Reisla on the edge of the bed. She woke up happy to see him awake and told him that after they got back, he had passed out and was asleep for a little over a day. This was likely due to the fact that he was temporarily put on ice. He asked about the old wizard, and she took him to see Morlock, who was back to his usual self. His magic was pretty much self-replacing, even though he gave it all to the dog the previous day. He got it all back after resting. He was also now an employee of the inn and worked for the botched hair guy who was actually the inn's proprietor. This proved to be worse than his usual existence, as he now creeped on every guest at the inn. He was also still indebted to Lafanpan, who wanted her money back. The reunited couple went to the top of the labyrinth, a part of the town Saitou had never actually seen before. As they looked out on the massive crater that was still being handled by the local magic users, Saitou realized that his clothes had been changed and asked her about it. She had actually tried to change it, but didn't, as she froze, thinking about seeing his magic stick that was apparently half a madaraka in length. She was saved by Gibungle the midget Merlin, who swapped places with her and changed him.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
He asked her about her communication with the dog, and asked if it was her time spent as a low-budget Mowgli that made her able to communicate with the dog. She claimed it was, and reminded him that she was rough around the edges and was a part of their party, as that was the only weirdo-accepting party in town. He told her that he was also part of them, and confessed to her that he also needed her more than anyone in their world. As she was about to respond to his confession, he got pulled away by Gibungle, who came to get him to pick the lock of the inn's door that was locked by the old geezer who had taken a customer's underwear. After sorting the lock problem, Gibungle got interrogated by Lafanpan, who knew that he had intruded on the couple's private moment. Later on, Morlock sat in his room thinking about something. After he got his powers back from the dog, he was still missing his magic wand. And as a result of all the power fluctuations, his magic wand kept rejuvenating and vanishing. For a brief moment, when he regained his youth, he was actually a girl. And in that moment, he saw Saitou and noticed something he didn't notice before. Saitou was cute. In another timeline, he would have probably been the one to take the plumber's meat stick. As he thought about this, Saitou came in to give him some honey. He looked at him and felt love for his son-in-law. When they finally had time together, Saitou spent his time crafting upgrades to his girl's armor, and she watched her handyman with excitement as he did what he did best. After finishing up his latest piece, he asked her to try it on. It was a hairpin he hid in her armor as a surprise. She liked it and tried it on for him to see. The hairpin reminded him of why he chose her in the first place. Lafanpan, who had given him the idea, watched with excitement outside their window. The team went to battle a beast called the Manticore. It looked eerily similar to the old geezer, and was even casting similar spells. When he saw it, he feared that the squad wouldn't have enough mental strength to kill something that looked like him. Rezla was the first to give chase. She sliced its head open and kept bashing it repeatedly with Lafanpan at her side, sending her attacks as well. He turned to Saitou, expecting his son-in-law to be less murderous. He was testing out countless arrows from his new crossbow on the wannabe Morlock beast, with a great deal of excitement that made the old wizard extremely worried for his safety. After getting back later on, Saitou couldn't find his fiancée, and remembered that she had taken her old man for an acupuncture treatment. He found a weird green flask and decided to kill time by creating a mini bath for Lafanpan. Once it was ready, she stripped in front of him and got in. When he turned away, she claimed there was no need for such formalities, as they were a different species. The virgin creep, who likely had no boundaries or preferences, kept his gaze elsewhere. After drinking the night away, they both passed out together on the bed. The next morning, Lafanpan woke up and realized that she was the same size as Saitou. More importantly, she had nothing on. She spent the rest of the day trying on human-sized outfits she had never worn before, and went around wearing Rezla's clothes, as she was too much of a cheapskate to buy her own. Seeing this, Saitou bought her a dress. As usual, she refused to take it, but he framed it as payment for fairy medic debt, as well as her help so far. After she put it on, he gave her a compliment that gave her butterflies. She ran off and bumped into a beer-bellied baldy who thought he could take advantage of the situation. Saitou jumped in between them to defuse the situation. The bulky man recognized him as the weak plumber who followed powerful adventurers all over town. He tried to punch him, but ended up with his arms twisted.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here. Get out of here, man. I'm saying.
Seeing Saitou act so manly reminded Lafanpan that he had actually been getting stronger and wasn't the twig they first met. He was starting to escape the friend zone. The next day, she woke up back to her fairy self, and he was at the side of her bed, waking her up. As she saw him beside her while she was uncovered as usual, she screamed as she was embarrassed, which made him confused, as she initially didn't think anything of being like that with him. Rezla had returned and told him that they took so long because the acupuncturist's house was far. The old geezer was doing better and drinking at the pub. Lafanpan came out and demanded payment from Rezla, who told her they had already agreed to increase the greedy fairy's share in their raids. As a clapback, she threatened to steal Rezla's man. They went to the old geezer's room, where Saitou explained the magic vase incident. Jibungle, who was spying as usual, used the Magipedia to explain the green vase. It was a magical artifact that made little things temporarily big, which explained Lafanpan's transformation. As they talked, the drunk old wizard came in wearing nothing, and told them that he had lost his clothes in a game of cards. To cover his magic stick that repulsed everyone, he used the magic vase. His already sizable magic stick broke through the room's wall and assaulted everyone in the process. While walking through town looking for his next coin, Saitou ran into a lady with a busted shoe. He decided to help her fix it. After he did, she recognized him and told him that he had become famous. Other bystanders noticed as well and flooded to him with abnormal requests for things they needed fixed. Later that night, he told the crew that he was able to afford dinner with the money he made. They suggested working as a handyman there, but he had not yet become familiar enough to start charging standard rates. He decided that after fully settling, he would take the necessary steps to set up a shop as a handyman. They all opted to help him out with it. Just then, Flanrill and Ninya came in. Flanrill's Wolverine claw was busted, and she wanted him to fix it for her. Gibungle, who never really went anywhere, was there as well. Liliza and Givra had also shown up. Liliza's dragon scales had fallen off, and she needed his help fixing it. The official hero party also showed up. Mompui wanted his secret sandwich recipe, while Raichi wanted to head back with Kainz for their private training session. Maivana, the item shop owner, also had an appraisal job for him. The king, minister, and demon king, who was still disguised, came through as well. The king had chipped his crown and needed it fixed. Donbane, the lonely smith, had a new master lock that he wanted the master lockpick to open. Seeing the crowd, Ralza stepped in to calm them down and got attacked by the ladies, who wondered why she was speaking up for her man. She almost got into a rematch with Flanrill. Lafanpan managed to get them organized by charging a coin for each job. The old creep used the opportunity to try new targets, but Flanrill was having none of his old pubes near her. Saitou, the fulfilled handyman who was once considered useless and easily replaceable, smiled as he looked at the crowd that had come specifically looking for his help.